Hello, Internet, or YouTube, or wherever you happen to find this video. So, my videos lately have been pretty music heavy and guitar heavy, so I thought I would do something a little bit different. Um, my channel's not meant to be just a guitar channel. I want to call it a lifestyle channel because that's kind of, well, to me it's cringy. Maybe not to you. If you're into lifestyle stuff, that's cool. But I have a lot of hobbies, so I'm kind of trying to cover those hobbies. As you see behind me, there's some antlers. Those are from deer that I have hunted and killed. I don't use the word harvested. Harvested is the popular phrase these days for shooting and killing animals that you intend to eat. They're not row crops. They're not corn. They are living creatures, and we are human beings who hunt and kill them. So I'm not going to use the politically correct phrase that makes it happy and nice for everyone to feel good about killing things. I have killed animals, and we ate them, and that's okay. But what I'm here to talk about today is not the animals themselves. And you can see I don't have the taxidermied heads of those animals. I do have the antlers from the male buck deer that I've killed behind me, hanging on the wall. But the reason I don't have the heads taxidermied is I don't really want to look at the live looking heads of animals that I've killed. It's to me that's always just been kind of weird. But anyway, what I want to talk about is what I'm about to turn the camera around to see, which is there's one behind me right now. Camera's backwards. American long rifles. So, a lot of people know what American long rifles are, and a lot of people don't know what American long rifles are. In the 18th century, a fairly distinct type of weapon developed in North America called the Pennsylvania or Kentucky long rifle. Now, these rifles were not just built in Pennsylvania, and they weren't built in Kentucky for quite some time, but they are a fairly American weapon. Now, long rifles exist in different places around the world. The American long rifle is a thing in and of itself. So what you see here are a 40 caliber American long rifle at the bottom. Above it, a 50 caliber American long rifle. And above that, a 45 caliber American long rifle. Each one from what would be called a different school or style of long rifle building. And if we turn around real quick, we'll see here a 60 caliber smooth bore. Well, there's some argument over it, but what many nowadays call a smooth rifle, which is counterintuitive. A rifle has a grooved bore that is it's bored on a helix in order to impart spin on the bullet. It's what we would, in a modern sense, just call rifling, but back then was a very innovative feature for some guns. So this is a smooth bore gun, like a shotgun, but it is rifle mounted. And rifle mounted means that it has a patch box, which is this thing back here, and it has a rifle style trigger guard. But it does not have grooves in the barrel to make the bullet more accurate. It can be used as both a shotgun and as a solid projectile rifle style gun. And then over here we have a 54 caliber 1820s, 30s, 40s style 54 caliber rifle. Now it is a long rifle technically, but it's not as long as that or these. So I've owned a lot of guns, just dozens and dozens and dozens, which translates to hundreds. And nowadays I find the only thing that's very interesting to me are guns that are by modern standards primitive. They require something like this: a powder horn, which is for the powder that will propel the projectile, and a shot pouch, which contains, among other things, bullets, balls, as they are, various accessories for measuring the powder, patches for patching the ball, and each one of my rifles has its own pouch and horn. This particular horn here, not very old. It was made a couple of years ago by a fella who is very skilled and sells his horns on eBay and the muzzleloadingforum.com. Likewise, that bag is new. It was made in the last year by a skilled, well, pretty skilled leather worker. It's pretty basic, but this bag, going back to this one here, this bag was made many years ago, I assume, because I bought it on eBay and it was from an estate. It's not, I wouldn't say it's more than 30 years old, but it's a nice bag that I had to kind of recondition with bear fat, bear oil, in order to make it pliable again and usable. And if we go over here, we have another horn. This horn is pretty old. I'm not sure how old it is, but it's pretty old. And powder measure, that's for getting the right amount of gunpowder to put down the barrel. And this bag, which anyone familiar with muzzleloaders will know, is made by the Leatherman, very skilled leather crafter. Various accessories that go along with it. This is a priming horn. This is for priming the pan with very fine gunpowder. If the camera will zoom in right, that is extremely fine powder, and that is what you want to use in the pan, which is this part of the gun right here. So if you were to prepare to shoot a gun like this, you would half cock the gun. You would load powder into this pan right here, close it, and then you would full cock this cock right here, pull the trigger. It will scrape molten shards of steel with a flint off of the frizzen and ignite that powder. And that's the very, very basics of how a flintlock works. So this is another one of my passions, these American long rifles. And in me personally, this passion was ignited as a small child when my grandfather took me to see the movie Last of the Mohicans. I'm a little too young to have been into the Jeremiah Johnson craze of the 1970s, but luckily there have been several films and cultural phenomena that kind of tied me back to the history of riflery in America. Like I said, I've owned a lot of guns. I don't really intend to be a collector per se. All of these long rifles that I have for a reason. This 54 caliber rifle is perfectly capable of killing anything in North America. A 54 caliber muzzleloader with, say, a 50 to 100 grain, or 54 with a 50 to 100 grain charge could kill anything from the smallest animal, because obviously it's over half an inch ball, but anything from the smallest animal to a buffalo, a moose, grizzly bear, elk, deer, anything that you might need to hunt. Now you'll see that, you can see it especially right here, and you can see it in this gun as well. You can see the stripes in the wood. The stocks of these rifles are made of maple. Maple is indigenous to North America. It's a very dense wood, and that particular wood was chosen not because it was just because it was pretty, but also because it's very hard. It's very sturdy. You can see some wide stripes here, and in this rifle you can see extremely tight striping. It's both beautiful and very sturdy. And so what we have here is a 40 caliber, and that can be used for anything from, well, small deer on down to even squirrel. And the 50 caliber above is definitely suitable for deer, and anything below, and even some things bigger than deer. The 45 caliber, suitable for deer and some things smaller than deer. I probably wouldn't try to hunt elk, moose, or bear unless it was a black bear, especially an eastern black bear with a 45 caliber. And the 60 caliber over here, it's a smooth bore, so it'd be approximately 20 gauge. Could be used for anything in North America. You could hunt any sort of animal with this gun. And so the appeal to early Americans is pretty obvious when you think, well, I could use it to shoot a squirrel or a rabbit, or I could put a large 60 caliber ball in it and shoot an elk if I had to. So this would be more of what we might think of as a utility gun. It could do a lot of things pretty well. It might not do any of them perfectly. It doesn't have a rear sight, so it's not a perfect rifle. But you put a giant lead ball in it and you could kill almost anything you might want to eat, such as that big 11-point buck that's hanging right above it, or the 11-point buck that's right above that one. And you know, the American long rifle developed in several directions, but what we ended up with in the modern sense is an appreciation for accuracy and a desire to take an animal, to kill an animal mercifully, in the sense that we didn't want to wound it and have it run off and die in pain, but to to kill an animal efficiently and in a way that would ultimately provide for our families, and likewise, in a broader sense, provide protection for our families. The long rifle was not the ideal weapon for self-defense, but it did fill that role. So anyway, I just thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about that. I might get into it a little deeper in detail later on. I'm not terribly into the myth of the American rifleman. I was when I was younger, but I'm not anymore because the American Revolution wasn't won by riflemen, and there's sort of a cult of accuracy in America. Oh, well, this is interesting. This is my first rifle bag. I bought this when I was 18. It's very cheap, and it was very light colored suede when I bought it, and it looked real nice and real new. And I've had that thing for 20 years. Now the horn is called a flat horn. It's quite small, and some people call it a Scottish style horn. A cow horn is taken and heated and wetted and then flattened so that it fits up against the side of a person well. Made a little catch here, cut a hole in this and attached a bit of antler from a deer that I killed a long time ago so that it could keep the bag closed. And this red rose, my wife, well, it doesn't look as much like a rose as it did. In fact, it's pretty worn out right now, but several times over, but maybe 15 years ago, my wife folded this ribbon into a flower, a rose, for me and put it on my bag, and she's redone it several times. But that was my first bag. I've had it for a long time. I don't use it much anymore because it doesn't have a whole lot of structure. It's real soft. It's suede. It's fine. It's not great. It's not anything as fine as this Leatherman bag, which has lots of nice features. It's very well made, well put together, well designed. But American long riflery goes back 300 years. In fact, the first reference to rifled barrels being made in America is almost exactly 300 years old. It may have been done a little bit before, may have started a little bit after, but definitely is at least 300 years old. And going back to an earlier video, when we have things before us that tie us to the past, sometimes it's a good past, sometimes it's a bad past. But in this case, may not be good or bad, it's a reality. We don't have to love it, we don't have to hate it, but it is real. So anyway, that's where I'm at for today. That's what I've decided to talk about today. It's not about guitar, so hopefully, if somebody is interested in something other than guitar, if we want to get even a little bit more historical and granular and going back into the past, I'm from Georgia. I live in Alabama, but the Southeast had an extraordinary culture that existed before Columbus, but pre-Columbian is what it's called in historical terms. The Mississippian peoples, that's the name for it. That doesn't mean all of them came from the Mississippi River or from the state of Mississippi. It just means that it's the broad name for the people of the Southeast, the indigenous, well, nobody's indigenous, but the people who came to North America before Europeans built cultures along rivers. And this is a southeastern Native American, Indian, Mississippian, Creek, Muskogee style bow made of hickory wood. It is a modern recreation. It's not old. My wife and I bought it on our visit to the mound town in Cartersville, Georgia, on our honeymoon a few years ago, by a fella who is extremely dedicated to recreating the weaponry of pre-Columbian Mississippians. And this is a quiver, arrow quiver. Now it has some arrows in it that go to our modern recurve bows, but you can see here a hickory bow. It's longbow style, stick bow, as some people call it. And you have a quiver that, this quiver isn't worn over the back necessarily like Robin Hood. This is worn over the shoulder, but behind, on your lower back, essentially. It could also be worn over the shoulder and on your weak side hip. And it's reinforced with a hickory rod to give it structure. And yeah, hold some arrows, including, let's see if we can pull it out. Same fella made this arrow with a flint head. So you're seeing a flint arrowhead made by hand by that fella in Cartersville. Go to the Cartersville mounds, the Etowah mounds, if you're in Georgia. And we tend to think of pre-Columbian and, well, Stone Age peoples as unsophisticated. But this arrowhead is not unsophisticated, and it is truly deadly, dangerous, and sophisticated in a very real way. Now, it might be a modern recreation, but it is done in the style of the people who made it originally, or who would have crafted these originally. It's made out of cane, or what most of the world probably calls bamboo, which is extremely stiff, has amazing it's very flexible. If it hits something hard, it's not going to break. And likewise, this fletching is it's not a European style. It is a style fairly unique to North America and provides amazing stability in flight. So that up there, that gun, is not inherently superior to this arrow and that bow. It did overtake the gun did overtake the bow in technology, but the bow is relatively silent, and you do have to be closer to use it, and it requires physical strength. But the way I reckon it, this is just as sophisticated. It might lack some technological knowledge, but it is no less lethal. One of the tenets of modern history and modern historicity is the understanding that if the American peoples, pre-Columbian American peoples, had been given another 500 years to 500 to 1,000 more years, with the disadvantage of a north-south geography versus a east-west geography in Europe, they might have well invaded Europe rather than the other way around. If you want to know more about how that modern understanding of peoples and innovation occurred, I recommend Jared Diamond's amazing seminal work, Guns, Germs, and Steel. It begins with the question, why did Columbus invade America rather than Atahualpa invade Europe? And it'll help you understand where we come from, where all peoples come from, and where we're going. Anyway, that's a little bit too much philosophy for me tonight. I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of a journey through my very humble armory of food providing weaponry. And maybe one day in the near future we'll cover a little bit more. So if you've happened to watch this, thanks for watching. Please do subscribe, like the video. I am a nobody YouTuber, but it's always appreciated if anyone happens to stumble upon these videos or like what I have done. So thanks, and I hope you have a great evening and a great day.